My ex lied about having cancer to keep me paying her bills, so I waited for the truth to surface. Then made her regret every dollar. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I thought I'd found someone I could trust completely. From the moment I met Mia, there was this magnetic pull. It wasn't just her smile or the way she could light up a room, it was something deeper. I've always been the responsible type, the guy who pays his bills on time, saves for the future, and likes knowing things are orderly. So when Mia started sharing bits of her life, the struggles she faced, I felt an almost instinctive need to help. She worked part-time, always hustling in some freelance gig, and yet she somehow never seemed to get ahead. I told myself that helping her out wasn't a burden, it was love. It's plain and simple. She had this way of asking for help that felt more like a soft invitation than a demand. "Hey, I'm a little short on rent this month," she'd say, her eyes shimmering with some vulnerability I couldn't resist. And I would. Every time, I'd transfer a few hundred here, cover a utility there, and I felt good about it, proud. Even that I could ease her stress. Our nights together were effortless. Cooking dinner, laughing about little things, her hand brushing mine across the table. It felt right. Safe, warm. But even in those early days, little things nagged at me. She'd sometimes give vague answers about where the money was going, or forget appointments she insisted she had made, and I would rationalize it. People forget stuff when they're stressed, I'd tell myself. Or, she's working so much, it's understandable. I even started noticing moments when she'd go out and mention friends or errands. But later I'd hear about some social outing I wasn't invited to. I tried not to dwell on it, convincing myself that maybe I was being paranoid, yet every time she brought up another financial issue, that tiny voice in my head whispered, "Why does she always need something from me?" And every time, I silenced it. I wanted to trust her. I wanted to believe she wasn't asking for more than I could give. I told myself love sometimes meant sacrifice, and for Mia, I was willing to do anything. But even as I made another transfer that evening, I couldn't shake this small, nagging unease. A question that lingered quietly in the back of my mind. Am I being too generous? Or is there something I'm not seeing yet? I never thought the first real test of trust would come so quickly. It was a Friday evening, and I was just getting home from a 12-hour shift when my phone buzzed. Mia's message made my chest tighten. I got the lab results back. "It's serious. I need your help with the bills for treatment." My stomach dropped, and I felt a rush of protective instinct mixed with fear. Even before I could ask what was wrong, she called. Her voice was shaky, almost fragile. "I don't know how I'm going to cover this. I need you, please." I didn't hesitate. I told her, "I've got you, Mia. Just tell me what you need, and I'll make it happen." She sniffled softly, and I could hear the faint click of her tear-stained phone as she wiped her cheeks. She walked me through the costs, explaining which bills had piled up from lab work and specialist visits. I could hear her apartment in the background, papers rustling, faint hum of an old heater, the kind of intimate sounds that made me feel I was right there with her. Without thinking twice, I transferred money immediately, my chest tightening with a mix of fear and relief that I could help. But as the days passed, little things began to feel off. She claimed she had another round of tests, but when I casually asked about her appointment dates, she shrugged them off. "Oh, doctor's office was busy. I'll know later," she said, her voice light but edged with nervousness. I remember sitting on my couch, staring at my laptop, watching the payment confirmation and feeling a flicker of doubt. Why couldn't she give me specifics? But I pushed the thought aside. I wanted to trust her. I had to. Even my friends noticed the strain. "You're helping her a lot, man. Are you sure it's real?" One of them asked over beers. I laughed it off, claiming I could handle it, that I was just being supportive. Every time I saw Mia smile at me, leaning back on her couch in her oversized hoodie, I felt that warmth return. Her affection, her reliance on MIT was intoxicating. And yet, the small inconsistencies lingered, a shadow in the corner of my mind. She always seemed to need something, and with every passing day, I couldn't help but wonder, am I being fooled, or am I just paranoid? Things started to spiral faster than I could keep up with. By the third week, Mia's medical expenses had ballooned into what felt like an endless list: specialist consultations, prescription refills, follow-up tests, all adding up to thousands I didn't really have. Every morning I'd wake up, check my bank, and see another transfer waiting in my outbox for her. My apartment, once a calm space, began to feel cramped and tense. The stack of unopened bills on my desk seemed to mock me as I scribbled down numbers, calculating how much I could spare without overdrawing my account. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself it was love. But deep down, a knot of anxiety had begun to tighten in my stomach. One evening, she called crying again, this time about a mishap with a pharmacy overcharge. "They're saying I owe them $300 extra," she sobbed. "I don't know what to do." I tried to soothe her, my voice steady even as my heart raced. "Don't worry, I'll cover it. We'll sort it out together." The heater hummed softly in my apartment, the faint smell of my dinner I'd forgotten to eat lingering in the background. I wanted to help, to protect her from the chaos. But the weight of constant giving was starting to crush me. Then came the first real warning signs. A friend of hers ran into me at a cafe, asking, "Oh, Mia's been out a lot lately. Did you know she went to that art show last weekend?" My heart sank. "Art show," I repeated, confused. My brain scrambled, trying to reconcile her supposed bedridden schedule with this new information. I pressed her gently that evening. "You said you were home resting last weekend. Didn't you go out?" Her voice wavered, a nervous laugh escaping. "Oh, yeah, I just needed a break. You know, stress and stuff." Something about the way she said it didn't sit right. Despite the unease, I still wanted to believe in her. I rationalized, made excuses in my head, convinced myself she was just trying to take her mind off things. And yet, every time another bill came in, that tiny voice in my head whispered louder, "Why does she always need more? Why do the details never add up?" That night, I sat in the dim light of my living room, the city outside quiet and distant, staring at my laptop and wondering if I was being too generous or if I was slowly being deceived. The thought gnawed at me, persistent. And I knew one thing for certain. Something wasn't right. By the fourth week, Mia's cries for help had become almost routine. Every morning, I'd wake to a text, a voicemail, or a call, each one more desperate than the last. "I don't know how I'll pay for this test," or that prescription. "I can't do it without you," she'd say, her voice trembling just enough to pull at my gut. I found myself rearranging my schedule, skipping lunches, even cutting back on my own bills to make sure she was covered. My friends started noticing the change. "Dude, you're disappearing. Are you okay?" one asked, worry etched on his face. I forced a laugh, saying, "I'm fine. Just helping someone I care about." Deep down, I knew I wasn't fine at all. The strain wasn't just financial, it was emotional. I started to feel like I was living someone else's life, constantly on edge, constantly giving. Every time I saw her smile, it felt like a reward, but those smiles were fleeting, replaced quickly by another tearful plea. One evening, she called me in tears again, voice breaking, "I don't know what I'd do without you. Please, I need your help tonight." I felt my chest tighten, but I agreed, transferring money once more. As I sat there, staring at the confirmation screen, the apartment felt colder, quieter, heavier. The smell of old takeout in my half-empty coffee cup only made the isolation more pronounced. Then came a subtle clue that I couldn't ignore. A casual comment from her roommate slipped out over text. "Mia's been planning that weekend trip for weeks. Is everything okay?" My stomach dropped. "Trip? What trip?" I asked, heart pounding. She responded quickly, almost too quickly. "Oh, just some stress relief, you know. Don't worry about it." But the unease in her typing lingered. I couldn't shake it. I remembered the art show, the vague doctor appointments, the missing receipts. Even then, I hesitated. I didn't want to believe she could be lying. I wanted to trust her. I wanted to be the good guy, the one who supported someone he loved. But that night, sitting alone in my apartment, the hum of the heater loud in the silence, I felt it. The first real crack in my faith. That nagging thought I'd tried to silence all along whispered louder than ever, "She's hiding something." and I'm helping her do it. It hit me like a punch to the gut the moment I realized I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had started to quietly check on some of the things Mia told me about her treatments, insurance claims, and appointments. At first, it was small, casual inquiries. Hey, did the clinic call you back? Or which pharmacy handled that prescription? But the answers didn't line up. Dates were wrong, locations didn't exist, and every explanation felt like it was stitched together on the fly. I remember sitting in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white, staring at my phone and feeling my chest tighten. A cold realization washed over me. Something was very, very wrong. That evening, I confronted her, trying to keep my voice calm. Mia, I checked some things today. The appointments you told me about, they don't match up. Can you explain? There was a pause on the other end, then a shaky laugh. I don't know what you mean, she whispered, almost too softly. My gut twisted. I mean the lab you said you went to last week, the prescription bills. They don't exist. I've been giving you thousands of dollars for things that aren't real. Tell me the truth. The silence was deafening. She started crying louder this time, but it didn't feel real. Something in her tone was off, rehearsed almost, as if she'd anticipated this moment. I didn't want to worry you. I needed help, she stammered, but there was a sharpness beneath the tears, a defensiveness that made my stomach turn. My apartment felt unbearably hot, the smell of cold coffee mixing with the faint metallic scent of my own rising panic. My mind raced, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every transfer flashing before me like a montage of blind trust. That night, I sat alone, phone in hand, staring at her last message, pleading for understanding. A dizzying mix of anger, betrayal, and disbelief washed over me. For the first time, I wasn't trying to rationalize or excuse her behavior. The thought repeated over and over. I've been played. Completely played. And somewhere deep down, a quiet, burning resolve began to form. If she could lie this easily, manipulate this completely, then I needed to be smart, patient, and wait for the right moment to reveal the truth. The plan wasn't clear yet, but one thing was certain. The game had just changed, and I was no longer the one being fooled. After that night, everything shifted. I stopped reacting immediately to her messages, stopped transferring money without thinking. Instead, I watched carefully, observing patterns in her stories, her excuses, the timing of her pleas. Mia noticed the change immediately. Why are you being so cold? You promised me you'd help, she said one night, voice trembling, but there was an edge of accusation underneath. I could hear the faint clatter of her dishes in the background, the low hum of a television she always left on. And I realized just how performative her despair had become. She began to gaslight me more aggressively, twisting my words, trying to make me feel guilty. I can't believe you doubt me after everything, she whispered, a subtle quiver in her tone. But I could hear the defensiveness. Each interaction left me exhausted, my emotions fraying at the edges. I caught myself replaying every moment I'd spent helping her, wondering if I'd been naive or worse, foolish. Friends warned me repeatedly, she's taking advantage of you. Don't fall for it again, I nodded, but deep down, I knew they hadn't felt the subtle power of her manipulation. The way she made me feel needed, essential, irreplaceable. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of messages, screenshots of payments, notes about her stories and inconsistencies. The more I collected, the more the pattern became undeniable. Each lie, each fabricated expense, each manipulation carefully orchestrated to keep me giving. And while anger and betrayal boiled beneath the surface, I forced myself to stay calm. Patience was key. I had to make sure the truth would hit in full force when the time came. One night, she confronted me, suspicion creeping into her voice. Why are you checking things? Why are you questioning me? Her words were sharp, defensive, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of power shift in my favor. I didn't answer, just smiled faintly, letting her anxiety build. That evening, as I sat in my dimly lit apartment, listening to the quiet city outside, realized something terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. I knew everything she was hiding, and soon I would have the upper hand. But I also knew I couldn't act hastily. One wrong move, and she could slip away. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding, staring at the ceiling, and whispered to myself, "Soon. Mia, soon you'll see everything." Over the next few days, I went all in on gathering evidence. Every message, every vague explanation, every urgent bill she sent my way saved it. I cross-checked dates, researched clinics and pharmacies, even called a few offices discreetly. Nothing added up. Nothing. It felt surreal. It's like watching a magician's trick from the back row, finally seeing the wires and mirrors that made everything look real. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, the fluorescent light harsh on the countertop, staring at the endless documents I had amassed, my hands shaking slightly from adrenaline and anger. This was real. She had been lying to me the entire time. Mia, of course, didn't know I was onto her. She continued her act, sending me panicked texts, whining about one financial emergency after another. "Please. I don't know what I'd do without you," she'd say, each message now grating on my nerves instead of tugging at my heart. I felt a mix of disgust and exhilaration, knowing she had no idea her web of deceit was unraveling right under her nose. The smell of stale coffee lingered in the apartment, papers scattered around me, the faint buzz of my laptop reminding me that I now held all the cards. Then came a slip-up, small but significant one. She mentioned a payment she claimed went to a specialist that didn't exist, but I had the exact document proving otherwise. It was the confirmation email from a real clinic I had checked that day. I froze, heart hammering, picturing the moment she'd realized the jig was up. My pulse raced. Every instinct screamed at me to act immediately, but I knew I had to wait. Timing would make the payoff perfect. I started noticing subtle changes in her behavior too. She was more controlling, more frantic, her tone sharp when I didn't respond instantly. I could almost feel her panic through the phone. The faint background noise of her apartment, the kettle whistling, the hum of a late-night TV, suddenly magnified by her anxiety. I sat back in my chair, chest tight, feeling a grim satisfaction. The trap was set, the evidence was there, and soon, very soon, she wouldn't be able to escape. But I also knew I had to be patient. One wrong move, and the moment could be lost. And as I stared at the piles of proof, the thought echoed through my mind. This is coming, and she won't see it coming. By this point, I had a plan forming, a clear picture of how I would expose her lies and reclaim every ounce of power she had tried to steal from me. I wasn't impulsive, knew the timing had to be perfect. Each piece of evidence was cataloged meticulously. Bank transfers, screenshots of messages, the fake appointment confirmations, every fabricated bill. I felt a strange mix of exhilaration and anxiety as I spread them out on my desk. The soft hum of my apartment's heater and the occasional car passing outside keeping me company in the quiet. For the first time in weeks, I felt in control, like I was finally the one holding the strings. Mia, oblivious to my newfound awareness, continued her daily act of helplessness. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she texted that morning, a desperate plea hidden behind her charm. Her timing, her tone, everything had been rehearsed countless times before. And now, it all felt like a staged play I had finally seen from behind the curtain. I typed a neutral reply, careful not to give away the fact that I knew. She needed to stay convinced that I was still the supportive, loving boyfriend she could manipulate. I began to imagine how the confrontation would unfold. Running scenarios in my head, her scrambling to cover lies, friends and family seeing the truth. The shock on her face when she realized every carefully constructed story had been torn apart. I felt a tense thrill, my stomach knotting with anticipation. The apartment smelled faintly of my cold dinner from earlier, but I barely noticed. All my attention was on the steps I was about to take. Yet I also knew I had to be cautious. One misstep, and she could disappear or manipulate her way out of exposure. I sat back in my chair, staring at the piles of evidence, the city lights casting long shadows across my walls, and whispered to myself, "Soon, Mia, soon. You'll see what I've known all along." And even as the adrenaline coursed through me, there was a creeping tension, waiting for the right moment, felt agonizing. And I wondered if she would catch on before I was ready. The clock was ticking and the stage was set. That night, It hit what felt like rock bottom, not because I doubted her lies anymore, because I realized just how deep her manipulation had cut into my life. My savings were depleted, my stress levels off the charts, and I hadn't slept properly in days. Even my apartment, once a sanctuary, felt suffocating, cluttered with bills, receipts, and the evidence I had meticulously gathered. I could hear the faint hum of traffic outside and the occasional siren in the distance. But it all felt distant, like I was trapped in my own private storm. I stared at my laptop, rereading her texts, the lies, the tears, the false desperation. It all pressed down on me like a physical weight. Mia called again that night, voice trembling as usual. "Please, I really don't know what I'd do without you," she said. But this time it was different. I heard the sharp edge beneath the tears, the strain in her voice, as if she knew something was off. I kept my tone calm, masking the storm inside me. "I'm here, Mia. Just breathe, okay?" I replied, the words sounding hollow even to me. She didn't notice, or maybe she did, and that made my chest tighten even more. I thought about all the times I had given without question. The long nights working extra shifts, skipping meals, sacrificing my own plans all to keep her afloat. The betrayal hit harder than I had expected. How could someone lie so convincingly? How could I have been so blind? The emotional exhaustion, coupled with financial strain, made me question everything. My judgment, my empathy, my ability to trust. And yet, amid the despair, a spark of determination ignited. I realized that I didn't have to stay a victim. I had the evidence, I had the knowledge, and soon I would have the chance to reclaim control. My palms were clammy as I organized my documents one last time, the faint scent of my cold coffee lingering on the desk. I whispered to myself, almost as a promise, "This ends soon. She won't get away with it." But even as I made that vow, a part of me shivered in anticipation. Knowing the next step would be the hardest, the confrontation. And deep down, I wondered, would she crumble when the truth came out? Or would she try one last time to manipulate her way out? The confrontation finally came sooner than I expected. I had arranged to meet Mia under the guise of helping her with another urgent expense. Though this time I wasn't transferring a single cent. When she opened the door, her eyes immediately searched mine for reassurance, for the familiar promise of blind support. I really need your help," she started, voice shaky, but rehearsed, the familiar tremor I'd heard countless times. I stepped aside, motioning for her to sit, and kept my tone calm, almost casual. "Mia, we need to talk," I said, letting the weight of those 3 words hang in the air. Her brows furrowed, and I could see the first flicker of panic. "Talk about what?" she asked, her voice tighter now, the false innocence unraveling. I leaned forward slightly, sliding the folder across the table. Every screenshot, every fake bill, every inconsistency was laid bare. The smell of the faintly brewed coffee mingled with the tension in the room, the quiet hum of the refrigerator sounding louder than normal. All of this, the appointments, the prescriptions, none of it was real, was it? My voice was steady, but my hands clenched the edge of the table. Her eyes widened, and for the first time I saw the mask slip. I don't know what you mean," she whispered, almost too quietly. I shook my head, letting the folder slide closer to her. "You've been lying to me for months, Mia. Every tear, every plea. It was all to manipulate me, to keep me paying for things that never existed." Her lips trembled, and a defensive edge crept into her tone. I needed help. You don't understand." I felt the surge of years of betrayal, the sleepless nights, the financial strain, the constant anxiety boil over. "I understand perfectly. You took advantage of my trust, my loyalty. And now, you have to face the consequences." She swallowed hard, glancing down at the evidence, the color draining from her face. The room felt impossibly still, the tension almost suffocating. And in that moment, I knew the game had shifted completely. I had the upper hand, and Mia could no longer hide behind her tears as she looked up. Panic and disbelief mixing in her eyes, I whispered, "This is everything you've done. And now you see it all." Mia's reaction was immediate, a mix of shock, fear, and the first real glimpse of guilt. Her hands trembled as she picked up the folder, flipping through pages, scrolling through screenshots on her phone. No, this can't be real, she stammered, voice cracking, eyes darting between me and the evidence. I watched her carefully, noting every flicker of panic, every sharp intake of breath. She had spent months controlling me, manipulating my emotions, and now the roles had reversed completely. I felt a grim satisfaction settle in my chest, tempered with the awareness of just how far this betrayal had hurt me. I trusted you, Mia, I said, my voice calm but cutting. I let you into my life, my finances, my heart, and you lied. You lied about everything. And now, it's all here. I gestured toward the meticulously organized folder. The apartment felt stifling, the faint buzz of the fridge and distant traffic outside amplifying the tension. She slumped back in her chair, trying to cover her face, but the fear was unmistakable. This wasn't a staged performance anymore. The truth had landed, and it was heavy. Her defensive masks started to crumble. I didn't mean... she faltered, tears streaming now without the usual rehearsed cadence. I shook my head. You meant to manipulate me. Every text, every tear, every emergency. It was a lie. You played me for months. My voice didn't waver, though the anger inside me burned hotter than I could ever remember. I had imagined this moment countless times, the look on her face. The recognition that she could no longer control the narrative, and it was worse than I anticipated. In the most satisfying way, then came the final blow. The realization that she couldn't hide behind excuses. That the people who mattered, our friends, our mutual acquaintances, would see the truth if I chose to share it. I leaned back, letting the weight of the moment settle. You've lost your credibility, Mia. Every dollar, every trust, every ounce of manipulation. It's over. She sat there, silent, broken, the air thick with the tension of justice finally served. And as I looked at her, a quiet sense of closure began to wash over me. For the first time in months, I felt free. But even in that silence, I knew the final step was coming. The aftermath was strange, quiet, tense, but strangely liberating. Mia didn't argue anymore. The fight had drained out of her like water from a burst dam. She avoided my calls, deleted messages, and even stopped showing up in the spaces where we used to cross paths. I spent the first few days replaying every moment in my mind. The sleepless nights, the constant anxiety, the relentless manipulation. And slowly, a sense of empowerment started to replace the anger. I had been deceived, yes, but I had reclaimed control, and that felt extraordinary. I took time to reflect on everything. How I'd trusted too easily. How love had blinded me. How I had let someone take advantage of my loyalty. I also acknowledged my own resilience. The fact that I had gathered evidence, stayed calm under pressure, and orchestrated the exposure perfectly. I remember sitting in my apartment one evening, the warm glow of the city lights casting long shadows on the walls, and feeling a sense of peace I hadn't known in months. My finances were still recovering. My trust had been tested, but I had emerged stronger. Friends reached out, amazed at how I had handled the situation. Some were angry for me, others impressed, but all agreed on one thing. Mia had underestimated me completely. In that realization, knowing I had been smarter, more patient, and ultimately in control, was its own kind of justice. I didn't need to gloat or humiliate her publicly. Her own lies had done that for me. Most importantly, I started focusing on myself again. I picked up hobbies I had abandoned, reconnected with friends I had distanced myself from, slowly rebuilt my sense of trust. Not in Mia, but in my own judgment and intuition. I felt lighter, almost as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. And sometimes, late at night, when the apartment is quiet, except for the faint hum of the heater, I catch myself smiling, remembering the fear in her eyes when the truth came out. It wasn't just revenge, it was closure. It was empowerment. It was reclaiming my life. And in that silence, I whispered to myself, I stopped paying for her lies, and I finally started paying attention to my own life.